Prince Harry, of course, is going to put a ring on it for Meghan Markle, but he is not going to go for the prenup. We'll see how that works out. Plus, Jeff Sessions fires Andrew McCabe, and he does it with reason. The problem is it was literally a day and a half before he would retire with full pension. And Johnny Manziel, of course, an alum of Texas A&M University, has a pro day, another pro day, even though he was a pro once, at the University of San Diego. Sort of bounces in and crashes their pro day to throw off a little bit and show for some scouts. Those three stories pretty big this week, but not quite large enough to make it to the top 10 per your response, what you thought was big on social media. So what are the big stories this week? Find out about that in just a moment here on the weekly wrap-up show from This Is a Conversation, and this is for the week ending March 24th, 2018. And welcome to the show. My name is Jay Clifton Payne. I'm your host for this show and the man behind the curtain for all things around thisisaconversation.com. It is a website. It is a social media hub. It is a movement where we get with you and we call you the best conversationalist people around the world. And we do say that. We do know that's not grammatically correct. We say that we have the best conversations with you people because we talk about all the stories, literally all the stories that could pop up around the world, not just the Chiron things that get stuck as your breaking news in the news cycle here and there. Here in the States, it's a lot of times, well, it's pretty much all Trump most of the time. And so sometimes the stories that are really touching to you are kind of silly. Sometimes they're serious, and oftentimes they're not exactly all about Donald Trump. Although this week there's plenty of Donald Trump in the news in the top 10 and throughout the story. So that's an amazing thing. Amazing on this week. We had a very, very busy week. We've learned from you over this week and over the past couple of weeks when testing later stories and condensing the time between more stories that you like lots of stories to choose from. And where I sit in the central time zone in the United States, you like what would be called later stories for us, or maybe earlier stories for around the world, based on the time it comes out there. We've had a lot of response, a lot of global type response this week, with some of the top stories this week being really big stories that, in a sense, didn't really make much of a noise here in the States, but meant something to large groups of people who were either international or where they were from. So we'll have a lot of talk about that and discussions about that in the second section of this podcast, which will be the housekeeping and my quick commentary part, since we're on a bit of a hiatus for the interviews going on right now. So let me back up a little bit. What we're going to present for you in the first segment is the top 10 stories of the week. So if you're new to this, you're going to get the top 10 stories as per you, or the yous who participated, off the bat. And you participate pretty simply. You follow This Is the Conversation and our social media habits. On Twitter, it's th_conversation. And on Facebook, it's This Is a Conversation. And when you get there, when you follow us, make sure you like us and make sure that we're in your feed so you see us more often. When you see a story come through the feed from us, a link from a news story, you just respond to it. You like it, you love it, you hate it, you share it, you reply, you do what you can to react with it. And the more reaction a story gets, the more votes it gets in the end. We put the Facebook and Twitters together in a spreadsheet. We do some number crunching, at least the spreadsheet does it, and bam, we get the top 10 stories of the week. And we go all the way down to the bottom, which of course this week, 128, we call that the almost irrelevant story. It's usually a pretty big story, but because of timing, it just did not get the love that the other ones got. So we'll talk about that one in the third segment. Plus, we'll round out the top 15 to show which stories were almost good enough to be in the top 10. And from there to the end of the show, we will just get in as many of the random stories as we can, so you know what else went on in the news, what you thought was kind of important, and sometimes just stories that I thought were really cool that I just want to cram in there somehow. It's very simple. Like we said, follow us on Twitter, th_conversation. Follow us on Facebook, This Is Conversation, and react as you see the stories. Now let's go ahead and get into this week's top 10 so we can get things moving, shall we? Starting off with the number 10 story this week, and that is President Donald Trump, who did something which is pretty Trumpian, and that meant doing something against the grain of what his advisors said. This week, we had last week, there was an election in Russia, which allows Vladimir Putin to serve his fourth term as president, and he's had an even longer extended term as being in charge, as his terms in between president, he put some puppet guy in and made him some prime minister, so he's still kind of in charge. But as you would expect with the presidential elections, there's all the world leaders who call up and congratulate or talk about things on those levels. President Obama had to call Putin in his last time he won his presidency and, of course, congratulate the Russians for completing an election cycle, not for having a rigged election. President Trump did the same. Well, not quite. President Trump called a little bit later than one would expect, a little bit later than the courtesy went on, just to kind of, puff up his chest and say that he did something to speak out on it. However, in his documents, his documentation, in his write-up on what to say, apparently he was told by many people not to actually congratulate Putin because they believe the election was fixed, and literally had documents that had in capital letters, "Do not congratulate," and of course, he was congratulated for getting his fourth term as president. So the big story on this one, actually, not so much that Trump likes Putin and Trump would want to pump up Putin in a sense. The big story is the fact that we know about this. We got this leak literally hours after the call happened. And so that's where the really crazy thing happened. The White House calls this a fireable offense. If they can figure out who was leaking it, they're pretty sure it's someone from the National Security Agency and someone in the communities that gathers information in the intel community who is trying to show that Trump doesn't know what he's doing. But no one can really point this out, and those guys are really good at hiding things. So we'll see how well that plays out in the future. Let's move on to the number 9 story this week. The headline is Black Man Acquitted of Assaulting Protester at Charlottesville Rally. This story gets a bump in response from the 10 story of 8.66% this week. From the story we pulled from CNN this week, an African-American man was acquitted on Friday on charges he assaulted a white protester last August at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. A judge acquitted DeAndre Harris on the misdemeanor assault charge during the hearing on Friday. This according to the Charlottesville General District Court records. Harris was accused of hitting a man in the head with a flashlight moments before white protesters attacked him in a parking garage. As reported earlier by CNN affiliate WVIR, a videotape of Harris being attacked was shared widely online, but of course he was charged with basically insulting the attack, basically egging it on. This finds him acquitted, saying he's not responsible for the fight that ensued that literally got him beat up in the process. There's still other charges being worried out by that whole crazy day, but this is one side that I will say at least looks like justice was served in the right order. We'll see what other people think as well. You're free to give your opinion on this one as well. This one we, of course, posted on Sunday, an early weekend shot that came in pretty heavy. Number 8 story this week, Mississippi boy 9 shoots sister 13 over video game. This we posted on Monday, March 19th. Bumper response of 8.7% from the number 9 story this week. 13-year-old girl was shot and killed after authorities say she was shot on Saturday by the 9-year-old brother. This happened in Monroe County in Mississippi. The sheriff, Cecil Cantrell, said the girl would not give up a video game controller when her brother wanted it, and said that she was then shot in the back of the head. The bullet went through her brain. It's basically killing her more or less instantly. The girl was rushed to the hospital in Memphis where they tried to deal with her injuries, but of course, she was not able to be revived. Authorities don't yet know how the child had access to the weapon and said he used to shot his sister, but it's unclear how much knowledge the boy actually had of the dangers of handguns as well. This is a very tragic story, which goes on top of all the stories we're talking about guns and gun control and everything going on, and the desensitizing of children to weapons like this. We will see how this one portrays itself throughout the rest of the week. As we said, this was posted in our survey, or at least in our feed, on Monday, the 19th. This happened on the Saturday previous. Number 7 story this week, going to nostalgia, and that is Clarissa Explains It All, the TV show, the very popular TV show from a while back on Nickelodeon, starring Melissa Joan Hart, is coming back in a reboot setting, much similar to the story that we have for the Raven show, That's So Raven, who came back on Disney with the adult version of Raven and the adult version of her best friend raising their children. This one has Clarissa explaining it all to her family as she's grown up. Not sure if Sam's still climbing through her window. I'm sure her husband will probably not be so happy about that. But nostalgia is back in full effect as Clarissa Explains It All is coming back to Nickelodeon. Say that 3 times fast. Nickelodeon, and this is in the works. We'll see it fairly soon. Friday, March 16th was the day we posted this, and of course, it got a jump of response because nostalgia of 25.33% in the 8 story this week. Moving on to the next story, and it involves money. Snapchat drops $800 million after Rihanna responds to offensive ads. This one was posted on Saturday, March 17th, so a lot of things getting in from the weekend and sticking around. This is the 6th story this week, and it had a bumper response from the 7. Not very much, but we get some serious love on how many people responded to it. 2.13% from the 6 getting into the 7. Let's get into the story, which is more business than personal in this case. Rihanna is the latest celebrity, of course, to jump on the Snapchat bandwagon to dump Snapchat and make the stock drop. Of course, earlier in the week, the singer and actress had a pretty big spat on being offended by an ad they put out that has covered Rihanna and Chris Brown. So it had a question of, would you rather slap Rihanna or punch Chris Brown in their Would You Rather campaign? Remember, Rihanna and Chris Brown had some issues with domestic violence, and it's not all that funny to be doing stuff like that. So according to CNN Tech, Rihanna's comment caused the app stock to drop 4%, which wiped out $800 million in U.S. cash. Now, believe it or not, this is not the first time in the last couple of weeks for Snapchat to be blasted. Of course, Kylie Jenner complained about it, but she complained that Snapchat now is kind of ugly, and then they lost some money there. So when celebrities are not hyping up your platform, it does have an issue on the people on the platform, as a lot of younger people who follow the celebrities are following them on the platforms. You can see that right now in the people who are saying they are jumping off the Facebook bandwagon, and most of those people apparently are going to Instagram, which, of course, is owned by Facebook, so there you go. Moving on to the number 5 story, we're calling this one a super story because we combined a bunch of stories together to make it a higher seed. Now, one of the 3 stories we combined essentially was going to make it into this anyway, and 2 of the stories are on the same team. One is a similar team that made it into a larger story. We didn't want to kind of scope it out and make it a little simpler. So we want to put in all the March Madness we could into one big shebang. The number 5 story this week has to deal with the Cinderellas, who are the darlings of the NCAA tournament this year, and they are UMBC and Loyola Chicago. We start off with University of Maryland, Baltimore County, because they have the bigger splash and the quicker splash in the tournament. They are now officially, because no one's done it before, the 16 seed that beat the 1 seed, able to knock out UVA in the first round of, well, technically second round, the round of 68 teams. They were able to knock off UVA, one of the favorites to actually win the whole thing this year, and, of course, be the only 16 seed. As people have been asking, when will a 16 seed be big enough to take out a number 1? Well, this year it happened with the Retrievers of UMBC making it happen. Could not make it through the next round, though, although it was a shocker. They almost pulled off the win versus Kansas State, and they were knocked out in the second round or the third round, round of 32, whatever you want to say it was. It was an amazing run and amazing hype, but not quite as big as the other team that's being the other darling, and they're actually still dancing, believe it or not. That happens to be Loyola Chicago, who a few years ago weren't playing basketball and have an amazing backstory, an amazing chaplain who actually put them in to make it to the Sweet 16 and is sort of happy, spoiler alert, that they actually busted out through to the Elite 8. That happened last night, and so it was posted late in the day. That'll probably be a part of our countdown next week, see how far they go. However, their amazing run began with the win over number 6 Miami as an 11 seed. Then they knocked off number 3 Tennessee, and of course, as I said last night, they knocked off number 7 Nevada. So they are now in the Elite 8 playing on Saturday, or playing as this thing is being replayed because we record on Friday. Time shifts are kind of weird. We'll see how much more we'll talk about the amazing team from Chicago, and we'll see how much more talk about Cinderella dancing as well. The big story in the big dance this year, and reason why this is happening, and there's been so much chaos with lower seeds and unexpected teams beating higher seeds, we're believing it's a catch-up to the one-and-dones, which should have caught up a long time ago. You believe it. But with so many kids being so good and having to stay to 1 year and going away, the kids that are just good enough and stay at full 4 years or 3 years at least make strong teams and strong bonds with their teammates. Now, this is being played out in a very microcosm way by a person who didn't make the countdown this week but did last week. That is Marvin Bagley III, the player who should technically be wrapping up his high school season year and was able to skip ahead to play college for a year because you can't go straight from high school to the pros. So technically, he's right now a pro-level player, and looking at a draft of mock draft, a third in the draft. Not sure who has that pick right now, but people are saying this one kid who technically should still be in high school has the hops to put up some pretty good numbers in the pros at this point, playing for Duke, and we're pretty sure he's only playing for 1 year at Duke. Moving on to the next story for the day. This one back to normal. This one a bit more tragic. The number 4 story this week, FIU bridge had cracks, engineer told state before collapse. This one we posted on Friday, the 16th of March, of course. This was the highest rated Twitter story of the week, the most Twitter response that we had from all the stories we had. And this one had a bumper response from the 5 of 25.13%. Now, they actually were 3 calls, I believe. I don't have the full story in front of me, but the day of the bridge collapse at FIU that killed many people, and it took them days to just clear out the rubble to get to the actual incident. The engineers had told them about various cracks in various parts. No one said anything was essentially going to fall over and just collapse the way it did. But they got calls that went to a voicemail that, of course, could not be answered until after most of the work to clear the thing happened. So there were some sort of structural issues with the bridge. It was a brand new bridge built over the campus, and some sort of issues that were there and seen that could have been addressed if maybe they were brought to light earlier. Maybe they were just found, and it's just the timing is just so clearly crazy in the situation. But literally, as the bridge is collapsing over the campus, phone calls are going into the engineering office telling about some potential cracks in the foundation, potential cracks in the bridge that could cause issues. Moving on to the number 3 and also the number 2 story, we won't get to that one. This is one that proves that we really do have an international reach. This isn't just something that's right here in my backyard in the States. This is something that people around the world or people in the audience here care about in outside places. We have a lot of international stories that normally don't get picked up within the main news cycle period, and the next 2 stories are proof, and they're high standing in these are proof that people around the world are picking up on the conversation. Starting off with the number 3 story, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj confirms death of 39 Indian workers abducted by ISIS. Posted on Tuesday, March the 20th, bumper response of 28.28% from the 4 story. Let me pull up the story so I can read you the details from this happening. Now, this happened coming out of New Delhi, issuing a statement on that day. The External Affairs Minister confirmed that all 39 construction workers abducted by ISIS in June of 2014 were officially confirmed to be dead. The Indian construction workers were mostly from Punjab, that's what saying, and they were kidnapped while working in Mosul of Iraq. And this was a statement that was a sad statement, a general statement to give to the nation. We know a lot about kidnappings. We talked about the Boko Haram kidnapping earlier. Didn't make it quite the top 10 list, but it was something we did in a daily update a few days ago. But ISIS and ISIS pledged groups are known to do these acts of general terror. This is something that we posted, and it was something that we posted off the Asia News Network website, something that normally we wouldn't pick up. Something just sort of happened to be there. We posted at the right time, essentially, and you folks responded by making it the 3rd highest ranked story from Facebook and Twitter responses. A lot of response on both of the medians this week. Same we said from the number 2 story. This one we posted early in the countdown, or late last week, posted on Friday, fairly early in the day, I believe. And this is skiers were flung off a lift after one malfunctioned in country of Georgia. It was, like I said, we posted on the 16th. It got a bumper response from the 3 story of 49.52%, almost 50% higher than the number 3 story, which tells you just how high the 1 story is going to be coming up in just a second. But we're going to pull up the details on that one as well. In the nation of Georgia, the country of Georgia, a malfunctioning ski lift sent people flying backwards and forced them to drop off a ski resort in that place. There was video that caught it, which probably is what really made it a big story. It got picked up by CNN and other outlets here in the States because video is great to pull in people for prying eyes, if you will. And at least 10 people injured when the lift started moving backwards at high speed with the malfunctioning of the lift. Other could not jump off in time and were thrown out of their chairs as well. Skiers, of course, because everyone has their cell phones, are able to catch the photos of the aftermath and, of course, the video, which is kind of graphic, watching the skiers being flung from the chair and not knowing exactly what's going on. As far as we can tell, no one was dramatically hurt from the incident, but I'm sure it was pretty scary nonetheless. And now the final story in the top 10, the number one story this week. This has the biggest response on Facebook this week, and it has a jump in response of 7.05% total, or from the 2 story, I should say, from the 10 story, which, of course, Trump congratulating Putin after being told not to. It was responded 294% more times. And from the almost relevant story, 128, it is 4,454 times more responded to, more powerful, more popular than that story, which we'll tell you about in a bit. But the number one story this week, here's your headline. Teen on driving test crashes through examination station before making it on the road. Now, this is a story that proves that we are all parents. We are all caring people, and we, of course, really do feel for some people, and especially young people working their way through life. And this teenager got a very big scare, and we can talk about it because no one was hurt. No one was serious in the incident. I'm just going to quickly read you the story and just go from there. This happened in Buffalo, Buffalo, Minnesota, I should say. A teenager taking her driving test crashed through the driver's examination station before she even got on the road. The Star Tribune reported that 17-year-old crashed a 2014 Chevy Equinox into the building Wednesday afternoon in Buffalo, Minnesota. The driver was not hurt, but a 60-year-old woman working at the license examiner sustained non-critical injuries, and the vehicle was significantly damaged, as you would expect. It happened after a teenager put the Equinox in drive instead of reverse at the start of the test, according to the paper. Nobody was inside the office during the crash. The teen driver will not be charged. The big important story part of this is she obviously did not pass her driving test that day. So this got a lot of response and a lot of comments on Facebook and in Twitter on just feeling sorry for the girl. Just so amazing. But the really amazing part of the story is the fact that no one got hurt, which is the most important thing. And she will have a story to tell for the rest of her life, an embarrassing story to tell, but it's a story that she's walking away from. So that's what's the greatest part of the story. And that wraps up the top 10 stories for this week from 10 to 1, that's how it worked out. And how did we get to these 10 stories? How did we, or I, pick the stories? Well, I didn't. You did. If social media, you followed us on Twitter and Facebook, and you responded to the stories as they came down with the love, with the hate, with the sharing, with the replies that you determined need to be there. And plenty of love for the girl who crashed the car through the storefront window on her driver's test, because that was a really, I feel for her right now. But you can be a part of next week's and any weeks beyond with what we have going on by simply following us on social media. Twitter, th_conversation. Facebook, This is a Conversation. You can also just follow us on our website, thisisconversation.com, because the links get posted there as they go along for the rest of the social media. And the more responses we see in the social media, we add in the spreadsheet and the magic happens. And bam, we get a top 10, we get a top 15, we get a full listing all the way to the bottom. And we let you know how it works out every single week. Coming up, we're going to do a bit of housekeeping and we'll get a bit of commentary. We'll figure out which of the top 8 stories, which is one of the top stories of this week, I'll give you a couple minutes of my thoughts on. And then you can reply to those thoughts if you wish here on the weekly wrap-up show from This is a Conversation for the week ending March the 24th, 2018.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Justin. We are the Epic Film Guys, and we'd like just a moment of your time to talk about an extremely important event coming up this May.
Last year, we hosted the live stream for the cure, a 12-hour live stream fundraiser where we raised $2,500 for the Cancer Research Institute.
86 cents out of every dollar raised goes to research toward finding a cure.
And this year, we're aiming to smash that goal, and we need your help to do it.
Join us from May 18th through the 20th for 30 hours of amazing live stream content from us and a whole host of amazing podcasters who will be joining us to try to reach $5,000.
For more information, please visit www.livestreamforthecure.com. Together, we can make a difference.
What we're currently just calling the commentary and housekeeping segment, because we're trying to keep the commentary segment alive and doing some housekeeping in the midst while we're working towards that. I want to quickly thank you for just being a part of the podcast and sticking with us. This was once and will someday again be the segment we do the interview for the podcast. And we interview just interesting people who have some love for current events in the news. They just have to be able to keep up with the news stories and play what we call the brackets game, where we give them the top 10 stories and let them play them off each other till they get to one story, and then give them a chance to talk and give some commentary on that. Because 10's uneven and I know the numbers, I basically play through a bracket of 8 stories, and then I'll give you commentary in just a minute on that. Very quick commentary on the story that I just chose, and basically tell you why I chose it, why it seemed like it was big this week, and what I really think about the actual story. As far as housekeeping, we still intend on getting back into the swing of doing more interviews with interesting people. We just have to get through basically a stage of life where the timing doesn't work out so well and just isn't working out for getting it done. We want to make sure that all the pieces stay intact in the podcast. So we're going to make sure we keep sticking things in here. So we enjoy having all the discussions from you about loving it, and some of you not so much loving it. If you don't love it, well, we're going to try to bring it back anyway. And we thank you so much for what's going on. If you think that you'll be great to play the brackets, once we get a chance to put them back into swing, we're hoping to do that within about 3 weeks to a month or so, schedules and being fixed and all. We'll take that back into consideration. You can simply go to the website and apply, and we'll take care of that. Plus, we have a page on the website, thisisconversation.com/wishlist, where it's a listing of people I'd like to get on, people that are way too famous to have time for me. But if you know one of those folks and you think they would give a little time, then I'd appreciate that as well. Check that out. And you can send me an email with details and contact information on how to get in touch with whatever, and back alleys and, carrier pigeons, whatever we need to do to make that happen. Because if we can, trust me, if I can get on some of these folks, Billy Idol, if you know Billy Idol, you can hook me up with Billy Idol, I'll do what I can to make that one happen. So let's go ahead and move on to the commentary for this week. And we played out through 8 stories, as we said, because 10 stories makes no sense and it doesn't even itself out. I could go bigger, but we only do the top 10 stories from the last segment. And it came down to, in the back and forth, even though we had some pretty heavy, pretty serious stories this week, it came down to a toss between the number 6 story this week, which was Rihanna's responding to Snapchat and them losing $800 million. And the number 7 story this week was Clarissa explaining it all, coming back to Nickelodeon. And because I'm a child of the 80s and I love some Clarissa, we went with Clarissa Explains It All, the reboot. So the flip-flop on that one essentially is the fact that over the two, as I worked them back and forth, while Snapchat losing money over celebrities saying that I don't like this is a pretty big deal in your business model, if your business model is following the hype, there's a bit more to the business model of this Clarissa thing than is on the surface. And that's where the commentary goes from here. It's all about nostalgia. And it's something that we always have been accustomed to as humans. Everyone likes to think back to the older days. Back in the days when we actually had pictures in frames and in books that were physical that you can flip through. Every so often you'd go through an old book of pictures and just kind of flip through them in that context and go back to the better days. Now it's a lot harder to do that as everything is stored digitally. It's on different phones and different devices, and you have to literally scroll through hours and days and months worth of stuff to get to something that's significant from way back when. And of course, in this day and age, way back when is only about 10 years, maybe, per the smartphone life. Here we're looking at television, which is having its own issues with creativity and going back to the well for old standards to sort of stay relevant, which is weird in this sense because they're going back to an old kids TV show to bring it back to be a new adult TV show, which is sort of what they did with Full House on Netflix. But Netflix's example, and this is an example of us growing up, growing older, and growing into our roles as adults. The millennials, I'm not sure exactly what they're going to have for their classic TV, but in an age where my 6-year-old will soon get a chance to watch, well, right now she gets a chance to watch DuckTales and Ninja Turtles, which is what I was watching essentially when I was a bit older than she was. And there's the battle over the superheroes and all the way they're portrayed as not being smart enough for the kids these days when they were a little smarter then. It gets a little weird when you start throwing in the ideas of what is generational, what fits the generations, especially when there's so many generations living out and latching onto old things. Now, this is a day and age where action figures are not meant to be taken out of the box. They're meant to hang out at your office place. And that means if you have an office place, you have a job. You have to have a pretty good job to buy action figures these days, as opposed to all the dolls that are half dressed and half broken in my daughter's room. And she's, like I said, only 6 years old. On the week where Toys R Us officially started its full liquidation of all its stores, a standout of childhood for people my age, we get to see a retelling, a reliving, if you will, of that whole age and stature by going to shows like the new Full House reboot or the new Clarissa reboot or many of the other things they're bringing back. Some of them are being brought back to life as they were, real fresh restarts, as something brand new to the people learning how they work out. And some of them, like this show here, is an update, growing up, growing older. I mentioned the That's So Raven bring back that's on Disney Channel right now, where Raven and her childhood best friend are now living together, raising their kids, which is basically the same plot as Full House. But this Clarissa Darling is going to have a family, a husband, some children, and interaction with the old family. So I'm very interested to see how the old Clarissa Darling, back in those days, back how we were, so young and innocent, if you will, has grown up and is dealing with things in the now. And will she still talk to the screen? And I really hope Sam's not still climbing through the window on the ladder. That'd be a bit much. But I'm excited. Yes, I'm really excited about this. This is one I'm actually as excited about this one as the return of Darkwing Duck, which is a weird thing because I guess I'm a guy. But living off nostalgia is something that we're really stuck in these days. We're looking towards the older days as we're looking for simpler times. Things really are moving faster. And while the old people used to say the same things a generation ago when they were our age, things have gone exponentially quick and fast and just, in some cases, terrible. The news is horrible. What kids are allowed to do is horrible. What kids are being stuck into is horrible. And we really want to go to something that's a bit more simpler. So we're plucking a simpler time character. And yes, she was a character on a kids television network, so it was pretty cheesy, and trying to see how she interacts in the world today. I'm curious to see how she did it, so I can compare how I have done it, looking in the eyes of me from the past and looking forward. And that's my commentary for this week. For more grand commentary, just stop by next week and we'll see what we come up with. In the meantime, once again, remind you to be a part of what we do here. It's very simple. Follow us on Twitter, th_conversation. Follow us on Facebook at thisisconversation.com and just like, love, react to the stories as they come through your feed. And you get a chance to be a part of how this thing goes down, seeing what stories are at the top. And in just a few moments, what stories is literally at the bottom of the list. We go to the almost irrelevant story this week. As we said, number 128 plus, round out the top 15 and get in as many stories as we can in between in just a bit. From This is the Conversations weekly wrap-up show for the week ending March the 24th, 2018. The all-new FreshBooks is accounting software that is simple, it is fast, it is secure, it helps make your small business run and just run so that you can actually run your small business. It takes care of all the accounting, making it painless so that billing is painful, keeping track is painful. Everything is simple. It is ridiculously easy to use, has plenty of powerful features, including automating tasks like invoicing, organizing expenses, and tracking your time. And of course, it's all organized in the cloud, so you can use it from your desktop, from your laptop, from your tablet, from your phone. It's very simple, very easy, and you can get a great deal on using it and help us out at This Is a Conversation by going through our website link at thisisaconversation.com/freshbooks. Thisisaconversation.com/freshbooks. You can try it for free. It's great for self-employed people. It's great for managing agencies. It's great small business software. It does what it's supposed to do. It does your accounting, and it keeps you from having to do it. It's that simple. It's intuitive. It's easy. How many times can I say it's easy? Sign up for FreshBooks today. Go to our website, thisisaconversation.com/freshbooks, or just stop by the sponsors page and find it there and other sponsors we have there. But this week, we are glad to be sponsored and spotlighting the sponsorship from FreshBooks. FreshBooks Cloud Accounting, which is simple, easy, fast, secure, and most importantly, painless accounting for your small business. 10 minutes left in the show. Thank you so much for being a part of this week's show. And of course, to be a part of next week's, you just simply follow us on social media, th_conversation for Twitter, and This Is a Conversation for Facebook. Follow all things about this podcast and this movement at thisisaconversation.com, and find out more information about my other projects by going to my main website, jclevelandpayne.net. Email me at info@jclevelandpayne if you would like to get more information on what's going on, or to just kind of get in the mailbag. So let's go ahead and wrap things up at this point. Oh, by the way, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, share it with some friends, and so we get as many people as possible in on these conversations. Now, wrapping up the conversation for this week, going back to the almost irrelevant story for this week. This is a story posted 128 ranked by you this week. As we said, it was 4,454% less responded to, not so much liked, but less reaction to than the number one story this week on the teen driver that drove through the building while taking her driver's test. The headline for this one, Kenya outlaws anal exams in victory for gay rights. This one didn't get a lot of time to really get a lot of love, although this does happen. We posted it basically very early this morning. A story that was created or put out there yesterday in the news came out after midnight my time, where I am Central Time. And a very quick read of it is, Kenya's Court of Appeal on Thursday ruled that the use of forced anal exams used to determine whether gay men engage in sex is illegal. The National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission took the case to court after two men were arrested in 2015 on suspicion of having sex. And according to the men, authorities forced them to undergo anal examinations by hospital staff and security personnel. They said authorities forced them to submit to HIV tests. They find that this, at least the court says, these are illegal and it's a landmark in gay rights for that nation. Something like this sounds very barbaric and very just weird, and that's because it is both very barbaric and just very weird. So we now know that. Going back to round out the top 15 for this week, stories that weren't quite hot enough to get into the top 10, starting off with the 11th story for this week. Your headline, missing teen located in Mexico, 45-year-old man arrested. This was posted on Sunday, and this is a story that's been going on for weeks. The shortened version of it, coming out of Allentown, Pennsylvania, a girl who was abducted, was taken and been missing for weeks, was taken to Mexico by a man, 45-year-old, who was a neighbor, a family friend, and it's all worked out by him signing himself onto the rolls at school, or at least the girl letting herself, announcing him as her stepfather, even though there was some sort of odd relationship going on between the two. She abducted her, and they ran off to Mexico. They were found safe, and he, of course, is being charged for what you do for 45-year-olds who run off with teenage girls. Going to the 12th story this week, Prince Harry reportedly rejects prenup ahead of marriage to Meghan Markle. Now, you can take this one with a grain of salt, but apparently Prince Harry thinks this love is going to last forever, even though he's really, really, really rich. He's about estimated to be worth $44 million. And, of course, Meghan Markle is on her second marriage because she's American and from Hollywood or whatever. But one would think in this day and age, especially after what's gone on with various other marriages in the royal family, both Prince Andrew and Prince Charles having their issues with former wives and other people, the next generation is going for love. There will be no prenup for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. They're just not going to do it. They say love will overcome this thing. This thing's happened forever. This thing's going to last forever, I should say, and there's no need to go to the formal work of the paperwork. Good for them. Let's hope it actually does. We hope these things actually do last. We don't really root for the craziness of divorce, number one, and royal divorce, number two. It does make headlines, but we rather have the happy fairy tale ending than the tragic, crazy Maury Povich ending. That's what we're shooting for here. Like I'm a part of this. I have no part of this at all. Quickly going to the number 13 story this week. Sessions fires McCabe before he can retire. Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, fired Andrew McCabe from his job in the FBI literally days before he was set to retire and receive his full pension. Now, whether McCabe will fire back, we're not sure. But McCabe, a very, very, very visible target of the president, who doesn't seem to like him and doesn't like the fact that he's letting the investigation go on Robert Mueller about him. Sessions actually had the right to fire and the suggestion to fire him based on some dealings he had, that being Andrew McCabe, in sort of meddling with the Clintons and the election. It's really not as complicated as it is, but McCabe did some things that were a little off-putting and decided, instead of being fired weeks ago, to just go ahead and retire and fade into the sunset, since he was up for pension soon anyway. The fact that they waited till 2 days before to basically put the axe down, that is seen by a lot of folks as dirty politics. I don't believe he's losing entirely all of his pension, but a big chunk of it is going to be gone because he didn't hit the retirement milestone. So think about that as you reach your point of retirement. Try not to get fired days before you hit your milestone. Meanwhile, a milestone for Johnny Manziel, who is back in the news and maybe back in the game. He had a pro day, or at least University of San Diego had a pro day, and Johnny Manziel, who did not go there, got a chance to throw with the kids at the pro day for University of San Diego. The 2014 first-round draft pick, been training with quarterback guru George Whitfield Jr., and so he agreed to take a part of their pro day as they were working with quarterbacks there. Now, scouts from 13 teams are on hand to watch him, including lots of teams there, and we'll see what happens if he gets himself back into the game and back into a semblance of a decent life. Moving on to the next story, it is the 15th story for this week. Republicans drop Senate primary challenge to Heller after Trump's urging. Republican drops Senate primary challenge to Heller after Trump's urging. That is a mouthful, but that's what happened this week at the end of the primary challenge that was going on in Nevada. Danny Tarkanian was going to challenge the sitting Republican in the Senate, Dean Heller, a Republican from Nevada, of course. But because Donald Trump told him not to, Danny Tarkanian will now be running for the House in Nevada instead, which is actually pretty good politics. Tarkanian had a pretty good chance of knocking off Heller, but Trump basically convinced the other guy, that leaving the guy was the right move and playing it out as best as possible. That sounded as weird in my head as it did when it came out loud. So here you go. President Trump is essentially rearranging the deck chairs, if you will, setting up the cabinet, setting up the House and the Senate, setting up all the players to be the way they should be to make things happen. And then, of course, he'll find a way to kind of mess that up. So we're running out of time very quickly. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of the show this week. We're going to get in as few as the also-rans as possible, and it's going to be very few today. Of course, happening earlier this week, Karen McDougal broke her silence against Donald Trump, giving an interview about the affair she had and, of course, apologizing to Melania Trump for having an affair with her husband. Of course, she also wants their story told and to make more money off that as well. Boko Haram has returned to kidnap Nigerian schoolgirls. It happened early this week, returning many kidnapped girls along with the message to keep them out of school, because that's really what they're against, schools or children, women being educated. Tyronn Lue, the coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers, has come down with a mystery illness, and he is leaving, basically having panic attacks and just having all sorts of weirdness in the stress of his life of running LeBron James's team. So LeBron James gets to run his own team, I guess, for a little while as well. We also have the loss of a former Mosley clown, Frank Overich, who played the role for a long time, died at the age of 89. And if you are a fan of slushes and you are a fan of pickles, then my golly, Sonic has something for you. Coming up very soon to the Sonic drive-in near you, I should say, pickle slushes. I'm not sure if you're going to mix that in your cherry limeade, but hey, it's summertime. It's a pickle slush. That's what it is. We are out of time for this weekend. Thank goodness we're out of time. Thank you so much for being a part of the show, hanging out with us, and just being in for the conversation. Make sure you follow us on social media and react and respond so that your vote, your cast, gets in there to see what we're talking about on next week's This Is the Conversations weekly wrap-up show.